EM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Hey, welcome to the EM Weekly Show, and it's your host Todd DeVoe, and with me I have Dan Scott. Hey Dan, are you familiar with those WeWork places? You know, those shared workspaces?
A little. I've been doing some research.
Well, you know, today we're going to be discussing WeWork and workspaces and the why they have and need emergency managers. But before we get into the show, I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow is 9/11, and it's the day that we should take back and reflect all those lives that were lost on that day, the firefighters, the police officers, and the civilians, and the heroes that came out of that, and also those that are still suffering with the cancers affected from ground zero. And I just want to say again, thank you for all those that served that day, and thank you for all that are still serving and still dealing with those issues. You know, 9/11 is definitely a day that we need to reflect each year. So,
well said.
So today we have Michael Gladstone, the We Company Senior Manager for Emergency Management and Planning, and is one of the longest tenured members of the We Company security team. And he's responsible for the development and implementation of the We Company's global crisis and emergency programs. And so he runs the emergency management team, manages programs with the aim of protecting employees and members. Michael has worked for the U.S. Department of State, Crisis Management Program Officer, and for the New York City Department of Education and high school history teacher, which I love history. And he holds an MA in International Law, Global Security from Georgetown University, and an MA in Teaching Social Studies from Columbia University, and a BA from Brown. So he is definitely a Ivy League guy. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Good morning to you.
I feel honored to be in the room with the Ivy League guy like this. So.
Listen, it's something that happened in my past, but really my experiences have more defined myself as an emergency manager more than my educational background. So,
so man, you know, we work, and just in general, the shared spaces that are out there. I was just reading an article the other day, and I think you guys are going to get really busy here shortly. The idea of having large offices because of COVID, and the idea of working remotely, doing those, GoToMeeting or Zoom or Teams or all whatever else that we have out there, seems to be taking fold. And it looks like, from what I'm reading and gathering, that those shared workspaces are going to become super popular again. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think we've seen a really good upward trend of more companies wanting to come back into the workspace. Netflix's CEO said that there's only negatives when people are only teleworking. And I think companies like WeWork have seen and that there is benefit to having people at some point in time, whether it's once a week, every day, every other week, in the same space and collaborating together. And so we've seen a lot of companies come to us and say, because of the fact that we don't necessarily want everyone commuting to one campus anymore, you guys are great because you have so many of what we can call our small campuses, small sites, come to into a shared space, but not necessarily have to pay for a large campus, not necessarily have to commit to having thousands and thousands of square feet. If they only have one or two workers in the area, they can get a small footprint in our space. And so we've benefited from that because of this rethinking of, as we like to call it, the WeWork 2.0, rethinking how people come together in an office space in light of what's going on with COVID, right? There's business that just has to keep going, and people do need a space to collaborate, and we can fill that void for those large companies who maybe never had any telework, and now they need people to work, not necessarily telework, but work in a diverse set of locations.
So, kind of running on that for a second, one of the things, though, that as an employer, right, is we try to ensure as much as we can the safety of our employees. And so now we're kind of shifting that safety message, or the safety portion of it, from one central campus to the whatever floor that you're on of this high rise to spread across the city or the area. And that's kind of where you kind of come into and preparing safety for those that are coming and going. And that's really kind of interesting to me. I mean, how do you start, when you don't know who's in the building?
Yeah, we've spent the last 7 months figuring out how do we make sure that Workspaces are prepared for an influx of members and an influx of people back into the workspace in a safe capacity. One of the things that we've done is we have our intelligence teams, our health and safety teams really diving into every specific regulation in any locality that we're in to understand what do we need to do to meet local law. At the same time, what are the standards globally going to be? There's been a huge focus on HVAC and HVAC returns and filtering air and making sure that all of our spaces, I'm sitting in one right now, making sure that all of our spaces have the proper ventilation in cases where they may not have met the new standard, meeting it or exceeding that standard. Doing small things like that, ensuring that in New York State, for example, when employees come back into a workspace, whether it's once a day, twice a day, go out for lunch, you come back in, we follow the guidelines there. So giving our members the screening questions through electronic means so that it's easy, they can do it constantly, have a pass with them, and ensuring that we've redesigned our architecture teams and our physical product teams have spent a ton of time redesigning how our desks are laid out in common spaces to make sure that we meet those 2 meter, 6 feet, 1.5 meter, whatever the requirement is. Putting in a lot of unique signage, having pillows on shared couches that actually give people that social distancing reminder. Not just a simple sign, but using the actual physical space that we have at WeWork to help give friendly reminders to people that here's how you keep yourself safe while you're in this office space. And it's been a great challenge. And it's a challenge that we're constantly looking at evolving, because I think what emergency managers and what people in the crisis and safety spheres are going to need to think about is, how is this going to impact us for the next 6, 12, 18 months? It's not going to just go away immediately. And we can't say, great, what worked in June of 2020 is going to be acceptable in June of 2021. So we're going to have to keep evolving and keep figuring out how do we make our individual workspaces, our individual WeWork locations that much better each and every quarter, month, day.
So I get this question quite often, and it's because of the situation we're in with COVID. And I work at an institution of higher education, and so we got employees and we got faculty and we got students, and then the students, and it's all about how do we return back to campus and do so in a safe manner, and make sure that the workplace itself that we're going to be utilizing is kept safe, clean, and sanitary. So in these Workspaces, or as far as you guys are, and you're separating people out, and what's the responsibility or even self-responsibility of those coming in to make sure that they're not only keeping themselves safe, others safe, and then the cleaning that takes place in these places?
It's a great question, and it's interesting, Dan, that you brought up educational institutions, because we've started partnering with a lot of educational institutions around the globe who are decentralizing some of their student population this semester, next semester, what have you. So we're working hand in hand with them. But in general, we look at a sort of a two-phased approach. All of our employees have certain regulations that they have to follow. If you're interacting with our membership, you have to be wearing your masks. You have to ensure that you are safely handling mail and package, that you are maintaining social distancing between you and the membership. Each individual member is responsible for ensuring that they are keeping themselves safe and others safe, following the recommended regulations in that particular locality. So we say, corporate employees, anyone who works in our buildings, here are the regulations that WeWork is going to follow. In addition to that, we are reminding our members that in every particular locality, you're going to have to follow X regulations. Whatever those regulations are clearly stated at the entrance to every location, on every floor, large, sometimes 6-foot posters. They're on screens. All of our conference rooms, the screens that used to have great advertisements about fun fun events still have those, but at the same time also now have information about how to keep yourself safe, socially distanced. We've reduced the number, I should say, the capacity of all of our meeting rooms so that people maintain safe social distancing. And on top of that, we have enhanced cleaning protocols, and our operations and cleaning and facilities teams did a phenomenal job, months of work that has come to fruition to ensure that enhanced high touch points are cleaned more frequently. And on top of the regular cleanings that we did on a semi-daily and daily basis, now we're having hourly, every 2 hours, depending on the local regulations and depending on the particular health guidance from that particular national authority, making sure that we have the cleanest services, the most sanitizing stations. So it's very interesting and great. Now we can walk into a WeWork and you can turn 360 degrees and you can see at least 2 or 3 sanitizing stations everywhere, which is fantastic. You should never be too far where you can just run over, grab hand sanitizer, grab a wipe to wipe down your surface. And other little things like making sure that members have the ability to get brown paper sheets to put on their desk, mark their desk for the day. And so there's another layer between themselves and the furniture that they can feel that they're enhancing their safety with. So it's not only the big scope things, but also the little minute details that we've really taken into account. And any company that has people coming into their space, whether it's a commercial space or a commercial office space like us, really should take those things into account because it provides people that layer of safety. And when an emergency management team makes the client, the customer, the member feel better, it's a huge win. We don't often get those. We can be proactive in this case.
Absolutely. Hey, you know what's cool too about the brown sheet is it's like the macaroni grill. You can doodle on the brown sheet as you
exactly. It enhances the collaboration between people because you may not be able to sit right next to one another because of social distancing, but now you can draw on the paper, show each other the notes that you're taking, and still work collaboratively, even if you're not 2 feet apart. Now you're 6 feet apart. You can still do what you need to do and make sure that you're enhancing your business's success while at a WeWork.
See, everybody, safety can be fun, right? Safety can be fun. So, now COVID's only been around for, a few months now, and you've been doing a lot of this work beforehand. I mean, what'd you do before COVID?
Well, it was not a sit back and relax kind of job. We have always taken our employees and members' security, whether they are at their home location, whether they're traveling, whether they are simply transiting from one job to another. We've always taken their security seriously. And so the security team at writ large has had a number of mandates, whether we're constantly enhancing our security technology to make sure that not only is it safe for our members to get into the buildings, but easy for them to do so. And we've also been enhancing things like travel security programs, working in collaboration with our shared services teams to not only get the best experience for our employees, but make sure they have the safest experience. And then, listen, every emergency manager knows that no emergency takes a backseat to a period of downtime. We've been dealing with hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires, unfortunately, terrorism incidents, whether that's in London or active shooter incidents around the globe, civil unrest this year particularly, but in the past as well. The yellow jacket protests in Paris that occupied a lot of our time. So this team is never without something to do. There is always some kind of an issue somewhere that could impact the safety of our members and our employees, and coordinating with all the other teams, whether it's operations, public affairs, member communications, to ensure that all of our constituents get the information in advance, not reactively.
Well, I have a question. It's kind of how do you communicate with people? When I'm saying people, not your team necessarily, but with visitors to your clients, I suppose. How do you communicate with them during if there's an emergency, like mass notification, I guess?
Yeah, so we have a number of systems that we can utilize. First and foremost, because we are a fun, active space, we've got televisions everywhere, and we work with our AV teams to ensure that in an emergency, we can take over those TVs and very quickly broadcast information to our membership or anyone in the building. The great part about that is, doesn't matter if you're a WeWork member or someone coming to visit a WeWork member, you can see that message.
Nice.
Additionally, we have a phenomenal app, the WeWork app, that allows our members to book space, allows our members to communicate with our teams who run our buildings, but it also is a platform for us, the security teams, to communicate to the membership during an emergency. And it's very easy. We have templated messaging that everyone's agreed on in advance. Fill in the blanks, which I highly suggest that all emergency managers and security teams do, is have pre-canned messaging that everyone, legal, security, public affairs, any of your product teams have agreed upon, so you can just very quickly get the message out and not wait 2 or 3 hours. Get that messaging out through our application, and then also traditional email. We use a variety of email messaging platforms, but we are always innovating, and we're always looking for the next generation of systems that are going to help us, whether it's a newer level mass messaging app, a better accountability tool, so that instead of having to use more 20th century methodology, we can utilize our card swipes to understand who's in our buildings, the Wi-Fi readers to help understand who's in our buildings, and then take accountability of those people through those systems. So we're always innovating. It's a huge project of ours over the next 12 months.
Awesome. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I know Dan has a couple of questions for you.
I do.
Super.
Equipment you'll need to mitigate the majority of medical or traumatic injuries often seen during austere conditions. Whether it is when you are on the outdoor adventure or your team has responded to a major crisis, the Outer Limits Supply Company provides practical, user-friendly first aid and trauma kits that anyone can use. If you're looking for that bag to help you keep organized as you travel around, something you could carry with you every day, well, VanQuest was founded with a simple mission: build the toughest bags and packs for you to carry every day and to help you stay organized and prepared. VanQuest has been making the ultra-durable bags and packs since 2011, and their bags and packs are trusted by the clients such as the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, and U.S. SOCOM. Yes, that is the U.S. Special Operations Command. Their bags and packs offer the best organization for the user-friendly experience, such as the high-visibility interior for the users. And I'm telling you something, I love that orange inside the bag because I can find the things I need quickly. I love my VanQuest bag. Don't forget, they offer free shipping, 100-day return guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. And if you put in EM Weekly, all caps, all one word, you get 10% off your total purchase. VanQuest.com.
Seconds count during an emergency. That's why at Titan HST, we're always inventing new technology to help people stay safe and help people who can provide help get connected with people who need help. At Titan HST, we've deployed mesh networking, allowing emergency communication even when networks are down, augmented reality, and real-time translation. We believe in the power of people to help each other stay safe and thrive.
Hey, welcome back from that quick break. And I want to say thank you to all the sponsors that we have. And without them, we could not bring you the quality content and people like Michael to come on here and talk about some interesting stuff. Before I turn it over to Dan, I want to make one point. A lot of my students throughout the years have always asked, what kind of job can I get in emergency management? And they always think about government jobs, FEMA, your state jobs and stuff like this. And I tell them all the time, I said, look outside that, look at the hospitals, you look at, big, large corporations that have large campuses. And, Michael's doing it right here with the We Company. And I think this is a great representation of how diverse emergency management really is. So again, thanks, Mike, for being here. And Daniel.
Yeah, your emergency management is very diverse, and so I want to second that comment. But when it comes to, so I'd like to bring it back to you partnering with institutions of higher education, even schools in general. Ultimately, right now with COVID, people are afraid to get back together, bring kids back to school. Even in the higher education, we have all across the country, people are doing different things. Some are. I spoke to someone yesterday who is doing half students in the class and the rest in the other, so they can split them out. The other half is coming in on Zoom, and then they switch it up so they can have both the in class and so a mixed kind of blended class. So with your partnering with those institutions, how does that affect? How do you with the redesign? Kind of give me an idea of what your partnership looks like and how your influence on the potentially return to campus.
Yeah, so I will say those relationships are very nascent. So they haven't necessarily been fully, deployed yet. But the great part about our space is that with our general redesign for our spaces, we've always had classrooms in the WeWork space, which can hold up to 300 people. Well, we already have classrooms set up. Simply reduce the capacity in that classroom, and you can still have a safe learning environment for those students who may not necessarily be able to travel potentially the thousands of miles needed to get to their home campus. And so we don't need to do very much from what we've already done in order to ensure that when we partner with educational institutions, we have the resources and the capacity to meet all the COVID era regulations and specifications. So the great part is we've already done that by redesigning our space in general. And that's why I think educational institutions are coming and partnering with WeWork, is because not only do we have a wide footprint that helps them bring their students virtually to their classes, but we've already taken those steps necessary to ensure that people are safe when they're in our space.
Well, I know. So, to give you an idea of something that I'm working with is that a lot of in the planning that comes with bringing students back to work or back to campus is the redesign of current location. So, like if I have my campus and I have areas that are large that potentially weren't ever used for the classroom, how can the We company, because it looks like you guys got it dialed in, influence those who are doing a redesign of their own?
So from WeWork's perspective, we are very transparent, whether it's on social media, whether it's on our website, about what we are doing to ensure that we properly redesign our space. So those institutions need only look on publicly available information to find out how can we do better. And in partnering with other educational institutions, I would assume, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I would assume our product teams are also helping them to better understand if you have a blank slate of space, because we deal with this all the time when we come into a new office space. How are we going to design it properly? Or how are we going to retrofit and redesign? And so we bring a lot of that to the table already through our design elements, through our architecture teams, and through our product and build teams.
So, kind of talking about those teams that you guys developed at WeWork or at We Company, I suppose, right?
Well, we used to be called the We Company. We reverted back to WeWork. It's convoluted.
Okay. so as you're developing those teams at WeWork, and then obviously I can tell that they've taken safety and security pretty seriously. Yeah. How do those teams work in conjunction with all the buildings and with the other like when you talk about design? Right now, I know that people that want to have like nice office flow and stuff like this, because I've dealt with it, right? Where they like behind you, they say, "Oh, we want to put like this big glass wall up, and it looks beautiful and stuff." And then as a security guy, you're going, "Well, I really like to have something a little more substantial for people to stay behind in case of the active shooter thing, stuff like that." How do you balance that beautiful look, and functionality to safety and security?
I will say that there's always push and pull between a security team who wants everything as hardened as possible and a design team. But we come to a great happy medium at WeWork. We work very closely from the inception of teams signing leases at WeWork to how things are physically designed. We've worked long and hard with our building technology teams. We've worked very long and hard with our architecture teams and our project management teams to say, here are the standards that WeWork security believes need to be met. And when a standard either can't be met or because of a design element needs to change, how do we change it properly so that it's not eliminated, but that we change it to maintain a security and safety presence while also allowing that design element to shine? Because one of the things we pride ourselves on is having spaces that are beautiful, spaces that people want to come to and work in. And if we are too secure in the sense that, well, there's 15 layers of security before you get to your desk, no one's going to want to come here, and our business model is thrown off. But at the same time, we want to make sure that members feel like I can do my work in and have this lovely environment, have windows and have glass up, but at the same time feel safe. And so we've taken a lot of time and a lot of effort to work collaboratively. Our security technology team is constantly in discussion with our building technology team. Our intelligence team works closely with the emergency management team, and then we collaborate with our security teams out in the field to make the best decision for the company and for our membership well before anyone actually walks into the space.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say something, Dan.
Oh,
yeah, I just thought Dan started to go, and I was like,
I was going to, because right now, I mean, I come from a very very diverse background when it comes to physical security and safety compliance and emergency management. So I have and so I've had to deal with all those arguments, and right now. But right now, what I'm finding is that more people are worried less about their physical safety, more about their health.
Yeah.
And okay, so what, making sure that, how often are things clean, and they want to know these things, and they want to see the clear dividers, and and it's not so much about their physical safety right now in the mindset. It's more about, am I going to get sick if I go someplace? And so, yeah, those arguments, they absolutely happen. And it sounds like you guys got you're building a great partnership with the security, the design, and the emergency management aspects of it. So ultimately, it looks like your company is, so it's international, correct?
Oh yeah, we're in over 36 countries, 140 plus cities, and over almost 900 locations globally right now.
In every nation or every city you may be in across the world, it has a different design, right? A different.
Yeah.
You want it to look to their where they are, right? They want
different requirements, different security features. There's going to be more features in places that have higher security risks than in locations that are have less security risks. Whether that's, and without calling out any particular country, whether it's places in Latin America are going to look, from a security perspective, different than those in Europe, are going to look dramatically different based on cultural differences about security than those might be in Asia, right? There's no one formula that works for all of our locations. But for example, you mentioned, Dan, people are really concerned about their health and want to visually see that we've done cleaning. Well, one of the things that our teams in the field are doing, our community teams, is that when they clean an office, they now get a little placard that they hang on the handle to the door that says, here's when it got cleaned, here's what we cleaned. And that's a visible way for people to see that WeWork is taking their health and safety very seriously. And in other locales, it's just about doing much more enhanced cleaning, visibly seeing those enhanced cleanings throughout the day. And we have a lot of, as I mentioned, locations in Asia where office hours can be extended because of work that they might be doing with the Western Hemisphere. And so making sure that cleaning also goes throughout the night as well.
So you mentioned before that in Paris that you had to deal with the Yellow Jacket protest, and then obviously Portland has been crazy for the last few months, and protests around the country for various different reasons. How do you guys, without giving any secrets away, how do you guys sort of protect your physical plants during this time? Because I mean, I've seen a lot of destruction going on.
Yeah. We take it extremely seriously. Regardless of what the issue is, if there is someone's safety being potentially threatened, we want to make sure that we are being proactive. In regards to the protests that happened, whether it's in Europe or here in the US over the last few months, we took a very proactive approach. giving our members as much information as possible about what we knew to be true at that time about where protests might be occurring, giving people the heads up about whether or not we would have our location opened as usual because of the protest, or would there be enhanced security measures, whether that might mean having extra security personnel or simply having key card access only. So whereas the front door might usually be open to visitors and guests, maybe on that particular day you had to have a key card to get in to ensure that there's an added layer of security relative to what's going on outside. And so we didn't make any blanket statements, but we looked at each individual protest zone, if you want to call it, and ensured that we moderated our operational posture in accordance with what was happening. In past protests in Paris, it became very apparent last year that they were going to be violent protests. There was going to be Molotov cocktails. And so in order to ensure people's safety, we closed down our buildings. We said, listen, we are happy for you to visit on the weekend or during the day, any other WeWork location in Paris, but for your safety, we don't want you to come here. And in other cases, like I mentioned, we'll be open, maybe with reduced staff, or maybe you need to make sure your key card, even to get in the front door, works in order to get in that day. So we've taken a very vigilant approach, but not so heavy-handed as to say, nothing. There's protests 50 miles away, we're shutting down. That just doesn't work for our members.
What keeps you up at night, Michael?
Ooh, what keeps me up at night? That's a loaded question, Todd. I think that travel security is one of the biggest things, because the thing that I think is, or the people that I think are most vulnerable are those employees for companies who are going to locations, are in transit, and something happens. Whatever that something might be, Paris Bataclan attacks, the London Bridge attacks, a pop-up protest in Union Square in New York City. And if they are not entirely familiar with their surroundings, they're at the most risk. And so what keeps me up is making sure, have we given our employees as much information as possible so that when they travel, they are best equipped to make sure that they know, what do I do if I get into a bad situation? What kind of precautions should I be taking when I'm in a hotel room to make sure that I'm safe? And so those are the things that keep me up at night. Every year, however, hurricane season keeps me up, right? Whether it's in the U.S. or in the Pacific, and because we are global, there's never really a time when I'm not thinking about natural disasters and storms, as well as the fact that the changing landscape that we're seeing in terms of security. What's the next evolution of security going to be? Are we, as a company, making sure that we're on the leading edge? And that's not necessarily something that, as an emergency manager, I can impact on a day-to-day basis, but making sure that we are always forward-thinking and never sitting on our heels. That's, to me, one of the things that keeps me up every day, but also keeps me up, but it keeps me excited about coming to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a comment, a question, and I'm not really sure how we can kind of tackle this one, but I think this is a general question, not necessarily a WeWork question. But what is your general thoughts on how COVID and all the protests may impact active shooter events? Wow, Michael, this is another Michael. That's a lot of stuff to unpack there. It's a big onion layer right there, including potential lower school resource officers. I don't know if we can answer the resource officer question, Michael, but what do you think, though? Like, as far as you have a lot of stuff to deal with. You have, the active shooter situations, you have the protests that are coming around, you have your COVID stuff going. I mean, just like everybody else, but you're dealing with it just not in one location, right? Not just that Daniel's lucky he only has one school to deal with. You have all those countries and all the different rules that are being set out there and potential everything. So how do you deal with all that kind of stuff in a single day?
The nice part is we have built a global team, right? We have 70 plus individuals around the globe who are helping us understand the nuance in each individual location. So that's a huge help, right? It can't be done alone. And we have greatly benefited from phenomenal leadership who has helped to build that team. That helps mitigate some of the risk. But on an individual basis, there is that fear that someone may take advantage of what is happening with social unrest, with a health crisis, and go and do some kind of terroristic activity, whatever it might be. And so that risk has always been there, and thinking that we can't only focus on health crisis. We have to make sure that we are still doing trainings. When we can't do them in person, we're doing a lot of e-learning, which is really great. And Dan, I'm sure you can relate as well. Is we're making sure that our employees are as best equipped as possible when we can't go out in person to give training, and when it's not advisable to have people all in one location, giving them resources and tools. I think the impact, though, it's hard to judge, right? We as a company have been lucky, but at the same time, I think in general, companies have been lucky that there haven't been more people taking advantage of the situation. It could be the fact that people aren't necessarily always going into the office. And that some of the triggers that have happened in past instances where people are upset with colleagues don't always happen now because people aren't in the office as much. Will there be a spike? I don't know, but maybe that's it. Maybe there's causality there. I'm totally speculating there, but
Right.
That could be a reason. But we're not saying it's not going to happen. We're not only focusing on one problem. We're always waiting as emergency management for the next shoe to drop, unfortunately, but that's how we live our life. We sort of say there's downtime. What should we be thinking about next?
Right. Michael, thank you so much for your time today. I know you're super busy and you got to get running, and I don't want to take up any more time. But everybody, how do we find you? How do we find you at WeWork?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Michael H. Gladstone. But if you need to or want to reach out to our team, we're available at empteam@wework.com, and that gets to our entire emergency management team. And so we're always interested in hearing from people, and that's a great resource and the easiest way to reach us.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. Daniel, thank you for your time. Michael, thank you for your time. Producer Brian, thank you for your time as well. And, everybody, please, check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, on your favorite podcast player. And everybody, please stay safe out there. And as my daughter likes to say, stay hydrated.